We continue with the lesson of national prejudices. This is the second half of the lesson. So, the writer is now sitting with half a dozen English gentlemen and discussing about people of different countries of Europe. I could easily perceive that all the company began to regard me with a jealous eye before I had finished my answer. What was the writer's answer? He had given his own opinion about people of different countries of Europe and also about people of England. And he had told some good qualities about people of other countries of Europe and about people of England. He had added some qualities which were not very good. I could easily understand that all the company, that the people, the English gentlemen who were sitting with him, the company of English gentlemen who were sitting with him began to regard me with a jealous eye. Jealous here means suspicious, mistrustful eye. Why they are looking at him in a suspicious way, doubtful way? Because the writer, being an English man, he had told certain bad qualities about English people. So they are doubting him. How can an Englishman be telling bad qualities about English people? Before I had finished my answer, they started to look at me doubtfully, which I had no sooner done. I had just finished my answer than the patriotic gentleman observed with a contemptuous sneer. Patriotic gentleman is that pseudo patriot we read about earlier. The person who had expressed his opinion about people of different countries of Europe, and he had given an opinion in which other countries of Europe, people of other countries of Europe, all of them had bad qualities only, whereas English people had only good qualities. That particular gentleman observed with a contemptuous sneer, making fun of the writer. He is observing, he is saying that he was greatly surprised how some people could have the conscience to live in a country which they did not love. Matlab, the man is telling that particular English gentleman means to say that the writer does not love his own country, England. That is why he is telling bad qualities about English people. How some people here, the English gentleman is saying about the writer, how they have the conscience to live in a country which they did not love. Because he did not love, he was telling bad qualities. The writer was telling bad qualities about English people, how he could live in England then, and to enjoy the protection of a government to which in their hearts they were inveterate enemies. Such people who told bad things about one's own countrymen, how can they live in their own country and enjoy the protection of the government? The government to whom they are enemies. Finding that by this modest declaration of my sentiments, I had forfeited the good opinion of my companions. I found that by giving my answer, my opinion about people of different countries of Europe, what had happened? I had forfeited the good opinion of my companions. I had lost. Forfeited means to lose. I had lost the good opinion of my companions and given them occasion to call my political principles in question. To call my political principles in question. That is, they now doubted my political principles. Whether I really loved my own country, England. they had doubt. And well knowing that it was in vain to argue with men who were so very full of themselves. Very full of themselves means very confident about themselves. These English gentlemen seemed to be very confident about themselves. The writer says it was in vain to argue with such people. I threw down my reckoning. That is, I paid my bill. Reckoning means my bill. They were all sitting in maybe a coffee house or in a tavern. So they must have ordered drinks and after that they had to pay their bill. So the writer now wants to leave the place. So he paid his bill, retired to my own lodgings. I went back to my own room, maybe in the house, in his own house, reflecting on the absurd and ridiculous nature of national prejudice and prepossession. I went to my room and reflected, that is, thought about the absurd and ridiculous nature, very strange nature of prejudice and prepossession. Prepossession is an opinion formed beforehand without adequate evidence. People form opinions without proper evidence. The English gentleman we read about earlier gave his own opinion without any knowledge about the people of Europe. So, thinking about what the English gentleman had told, the writer sat in his room. Among all the famous sayings of antiquity, there is none that does greater honor to the author or affords greater pleasure to the reader, at least if he be a person of a generous and benevolent heart, than that of the philosopher, who being asked what countryman he was, replied that he was a citizen of the world. So, a famous saying of antiquity. Antiquity means past. So the writer is saying there is a famous saying, thought that has been told in the past, an old saying, which is that does greater honor to the author or affords greater pleasure to the reader. So he is telling about a philosopher than that of the philosopher. When a philosopher, he was asked which country he belonged to, what countryman he was, he replied he was a citizen of the world. He did not say that I belong to a particular country. How few are there to be found in modern times who can say the same, or whose conduct is consistent with such a profession. How few people are there, very few people are there in modern times who can say like this, that he is a citizen of the world. Usually people, what do they say? I am a citizen of a particular country. But this particular philosopher, he told, I am a citizen of the world. Very few people would say like that. We have now become so much Englishmen, Frenchmen, Dutchmen, Spaniards or Germans that we are no longer citizens of the world. Now we are much more the citizens of a particular country, maybe belonging to England or to France or to Netherlands or to Spain or to Germany. We are no longer citizens of the world. So much the natives of one particular spot or members of one petty society that we no longer consider ourselves as the general inhabitants of the globe or members of that grand society which comprehends the whole humankind. So most people in the modern world would say that they belong to a particular country. They would never say that they are citizens of the world. We belong to one particular spot or a petty society or one particular country. We wouldn't say that we are citizens of the world. Did these prejudices prevail only among the meanest and lowest of people, perhaps they might be excused, as they have few, if any, opportunities of correcting them by reading, travelling or conversing with foreigners. If this type of prejudice about one's own country and about other countries, if this type of prejudice is there among only the lowest of people, then we can excuse such people, because these low people, they don't always have the opportunity to correct themselves. How can they correct themselves? By reading, traveling, or conversing with foreigners. So that is how, by reading about other places, by traveling to other places or talking with other people, we get to know about them. But the misfortune is that they infect the minds and influence the conduct even of our gentlemen, even of people who the minds and conduct, the behavior of gentlemen, people who call themselves gentlemen, not only the meanest and lowest of people, even people who call themselves gentlemen, their minds are infected by these prejudices. I mean, who have every title to this appellation. Appellation means pretense, those who pretend to be gentlemen. But an exemption from prejudice, which however in my opinion ought to be regarded as the typical mark of a gentleman. So the writer is saying, how can a person call himself a gentleman? What is the typical mark of a gentleman? The typical mark of a gentleman is exemption from prejudice. There should be no kind of prejudice in him. Then you can call the person a gentleman. For let a man's birth be ever so high, his station ever so exalted, or bold, or his fortune ever so large. Yet if he is not free from national and other prejudices, I should make bold to tell him that he had a low and vulgar mind. Let a man's birth be ever so high. A person might be born into a high family. His station ever so exalted. High position in society shayad hoga. Or his fortune ever so large. That is, he might be a very rich person. Even then, if he is not free from national and other prejudices, if he has any of these prejudices, then I will be bold to tell him that he had a low and vulgar mind. Vulgar means dirty, low mind. So the writer says, I will be bold enough to tell him, you are not a gentleman, you have a low mind, you have a vulgar mind. And he had no claim to the character of a gentleman. He cannot call himself a gentleman. And in fact, you will always find that those are most apt to boast of national merit. Some people, the people who boast of national merit, who are they? Who have little or no merit of their own. So who are the people who boast of national merit? That my country is a great country. Those who have little or no merit of their own to depend on. They are the ones who boast of national merit. Than which, to be sure, nothing is more natural. The slender vine twists around the sturdy oak for no other reason in the world but because it has no strength sufficient to support itself. Such people who have no merit of their own, they are like the slender vine. The slender vine that twists around the sturdy oak tree, very strong tree hai. Such a tree ke or round slender vine, that is creeper, जैसे grape vine का जो creeper है, it twists itself around the oak, the strong tree, and it does so because it is a weak stem. It has got weak stem, it cannot stand on its own. So it twists itself, goes round and round the strong oak tree. So here this metaphor, this comparison is done of the vine and oak. The comparison is done with a very weak person who takes merit for his nation's merit. So the slender vine refers to a weak person, and the sturdy oak refers to the strong nation. So a person who boasts of national merit has no merit of his own. That is why he takes the support of his strong nation. Should it be alleged in defense of national prejudice? Should it be alleged in defense of national prejudice that it is the natural and necessary growth of love to our country? Can we say in defense of national prejudice that national prejudice hona to natural and necessary growth of love to our country? If we love our country, we should have national prejudice. Can we say like that? And that therefore the former cannot be destroyed without hurting the latter. The former, national prejudice, cannot be destroyed without hurting love to our country. That is, national prejudice nahi hai to we do not love our country. Can we say like that? I answer that this is a serious misconception and false belief. The writer says this is a wrong, false belief. That is, that it is the growth of love to our country, I will allow, but that it is the natural and necessary growth of it, I absolutely deny. The writer says, I completely say no, I absolutely deny that fact that it is a natural and necessary growth. It is not necessary to have national prejudice when we say we have love for our country. Superstition and enthusiasm too are the growth of religion. Yes, many people who are very religious, they are superstitious and enthusiastic also. But whoever took it in his head to affirm that they are the necessary growth of this noble principle, can you say that a person who is religious should be superstitious and enthusiastic? The writer says it is not necessary that a person who is religious should always be superstitious and enthusiastic. They are, if you will, the bastard sprouts of this heavy plant. The heavy plant of religion ka bastard sprouts hai. The shoot that grows, that is not the real shoot. Real sprout nahi hai, bastard sprouts. That is, bastards are actually children who are grown outside the wedlock. So the sprouts which are not the real sprouts, or the shoot that is not the real shoot of the heavy plant of religion. So that means superstition and enthusiasm are not needed if you are a religious person. But there are people who are religious and at the same time superstitious and enthusiastic also. But not its natural and genuine branches. They are not the genuine, real branches of the heavy plant of religion. And may safely enough be lopped off. You can safely cut them off. Lopped off means cut them off. What can you cut off? The branches of superstition and enthusiasm. You can cut them off and still you can remain religious without doing any harm to the parent stem of religion. Nay, perhaps till once they are lopped off, this goodly tree can never flourish in perfect health and vigor. The goodly tree of religion cannot flourish, cannot grow properly in perfect health and vigor unless they are cut off. The superstition and enthusiasm, unless these two are got rid of, the goodly tree of religion cannot grow properly. Is it not necessary? Is it not very possible that I may love my country without hating the natives of other countries? Can we do that? Love one's own country and at the same time love natives of other countries? Is it possible? The writer is asking. That I may exert the mock heroic bravery, the most undaunted resolution in defending its law and liberty without despising all the rest of the world as cowards and poltroons. Poltroons means cowards. I don't have to despise, that is hate others. Only then I can love my country. I don't have to do anything like that. I can defend the law and liberty of my own country, but at the same time I can love the rest of the world. I don't have to hate them, telling that they are cowards. Most certainly it is, and if it were not. But why need I suppose what is absolutely impossible? So I can love my own country and at the same time love people of other countries. I don't have to despise them. I don't have to hate them. But if it were not, I must own, I should prefer the title of the ancient philosopher. Earlier on the previous page we had read about the ancient philosopher who said that he was a citizen of the world. That is, a citizen of the world. To that of an Englishman, a Frenchman, a European, or to any other appellation, whatever. Appellation means title. I don't want any special title of being an Englishman or a Frenchman or a European. I would prefer to call myself a citizen of the world.